All right. Hey, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the IT Hour. We are here and we should have people trickling in as we get started here. So glad to be here for the last Friday of June, if you can believe it already. We've blazing through the first part of summer. Hey, we're uh,
Yeah,
we're getting all ready for Independence Day here in the U.S. So hey, Kelly and Alan and James. I've got some others trickling in. I see the names starting to pop up here. Tiernan and Stephen and Lou and Josh, Matt, and Kelly, the another Kelly and Thomas. So welcome y'all as everyone starts popping in. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. So Sergey, you got anything fun planned for July 4th?
actually, yeah. So going up to Buffalo, starting the 3rd, coming back the 9th. We happen to have family up there. I'm going to do some golfing in Canada. I'm going to do some swimming with family and friends at the pool, as well as one of my wife's friends is having her wedding on that Sunday. So it happened to be a massive week-long celebration of things. So yes, a lot of plans. Excited.
Very nice. Very nice. And I am in a different spot as usual, so forgive the noise, y'all. I'm in a hotel lobby, but I just went and saw Alanis and Joan Jett last night, and it was amazing, as you can imagine. So, totally worth it. Totally worth staying out late and everything. Sergey and I were just talking before we got uh, on live that about this area, and we have a ton of great concert venues and always having great concerts and stuff. The night before was Red Hot Chili Peppers. I didn't go to that one, but it was really hot weather. It's so much fun when you get to do a lot of great concerts and stuff. And Kelly says she's been known to burn down her bedtime in the name of rock and roll. I mean, that's one of the good reasons to do it. So summertime's always uh, a great time to have lots of concerts, even though we have a lot of outdoor venues. So it can get a little hot, but still worth it. So, yeah. And with that, let's see, we've got some community stuff and product announcements. And then Sergi's going to go into mobile device trust, which I do believe right before we got started, James was already ready to go saying, I've been waiting for this. So we've got some people chomping at the bit to hear what you have to say today. So I'm going to pull up our community stuff. We've got a few things going on. Uh, in product discussions, Blake Richardson wanted to know, had a question about Cloud Directory 0365 because he was trying to get an employee field type to export over as an attribute in 365 and was having some trouble with that because it goes into Google Workspace, but he couldn't get it to go over the same in 0365. So I had a question about that. And GRC had a question about Rapid7 IDR integration, wondering who also uses that for their SIEM leverage and leveraging Jump Cloud API and wants some help with that. And Tom had a fun topic in the lobby about Apple has moved activation lock controls to Apple Business Manager so that you can go unlock all the things. Actually, it's so when someone leaves your company and you were struggling to unlock that device, you now have some abilities to do so, which whoop whoop. I know people have had some struggles with that. And on the product release side, I think it was Hari that just posted this about the modification of disable Windows Store application policy settings. So we formally removed the checkbox configuration from disable Windows Store application policy to bring you consistency in user experience and prevent the manual intervention of selecting the option before binding the policy to device or group. So that should help you out. This will be in our show notes. It's just a link to Hari's actual post. So you can go check that out and learn some more information there. I know some people have been looking forward to that. Hey, everyone. Hey, Nathan. Glad to see you come on board. And a little bit of a slow news week in the community. We had a ton last week, a little busier then. But Serge, it's all you. What you got for us this week?
Awesome. Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, now.
Awesome. Okay, so hey everyone, Sergey Belous here. I'm the principal product manager. I oversee mobility at JumpCloud. So really excited to discuss with you a topic called mobile device trust. So often the question arises of what exactly is that? Well, we'll get into that, but I want to articulate that it's a combination of JumpCloud Go, device posturing, and conditional access. So, really excited to showcase what we've been working on. I know a number of you have been asking, patiently waiting, eager to start testing. So, uh, here's the agenda that we're looking at, the what and the why. Essentially, what are the problems that we're trying to solve? What is it? Essentially, why are we trying? Why it matters? How are we solving it? Essentially, the platform differences associated with desktop versus mobile, which has been a little bit of a long tail there, as well as next steps, things that are really relevant to you, timelines, and maybe let's take a look at a demo. So, what is it that we're solving for? So, the reason the way I would describe it is why do we even care? Well, organizations, typically the ones that you work for, really do care about their data, their business plans, live code, other resources that are accessible in their cloud applications. And with the amount of smartphones in the enterprise or in the SMB market, typically owned by the employees or the end users themselves, accessing them. And IT admins have this challenge of saying, how do we manage who can access what on which devices? So, really, why does that matter? Well, as I alluded to, typically when it comes to corporate fully managed desktops, whether that's Windows, Mac OS, Linux, we have a very good level of control, posture, a certificate that can attest to that. You can essentially nuke the device as a whole. But when it starts coming to mobility, there's different paradigms. There's the corporate fully managed uh, iOS, Android devices, essentially that you as a company procure and maybe are configuring them maybe for a kiosk or for knowledge base workers where it's essentially issued a particular iPhone or Samsung device. And then there's that middle section, the BYOD partition. That's where the employees, the owners of those devices are not necessarily the company itself, and they want to still access things like their email, Slack, or their uh, other productivity applications, and ensuring that those are managed and trusted and able to access the right resources at the right time. So ultimately, device trust is for both desktop and mobile. It combines conditional access to give a level of flexibility with application policies as well as posture enforcement. So how are we solving this for you guys? Well, let's first talk about the differences in the platform. One, when it comes to desktop, you typically have the GemCloud agent. That's what essentially is the delivery mechanism, and the trust anchor is one of the aspects of the trust anchor is the device trust certificate, if you have the global certificate distribution enabled. With mobile, that paradigm shifts a little bit. For both company owned and BYOD devices, we needed a mechanism by which we could deliver the necessary trust aspects. So in this case, we've selected and have been utilizing JumpCloud Protect, our MFA application, on both iOS and Android for all use cases, BYO and company owned. And when you get Protect installed on your device and configured, what we will be doing is configuring a refresh token. That's essentially the underlying capabilities of JumpCloud Go. And moving forward, you'll be able to use biometric authentication when attempting to access or authenticate to the corresponding secure SSO applications. Additionally, it will be able to do a level of posture checking as part of that. So When we look at mobile device trust, there are a number of requirements. To be able to do this complete end-to-end experience, one, Jump Cloud needs to manage those mobile devices. So whether those are company-owned devices or BYOD, uh, we'll have to have those in our management platform. For Android, we have Android EMM, so that will have to get enabled. If you are utilizing iOS or iPadOS devices, you'll have to enable Apple MDM and VPP for the synchronization and pushing of Jump Cloud Protect. Protect is the application, so both for Android or iOS, and then you'll have to enable Jump Cloud Go. You'll be able to apply that to mobile platforms if you're not yet ready to use it, but we definitely encourage you to start exploring Jump Cloud Go on both the desktop and the mobile platforms. And then once you've had all those pieces enabled, and if you never enable conditional access policies, you essentially will meet the requirements for passwordless authentication on mobile. So it'll be Jump Cloud Go for mobile. As you enable conditional access policies, you will then have the complete notion of the device trust tested on those mobile devices and conditional gating there. So want to touch a couple of things. Android EMM, so all the flows that I've presented in the past, the work profile BYO, the work profile company owned, fully managed and dedicated, all four of these use cases will be supported out the gate. And same applies to iOS. So whether it's user enrollment, the device self-enrollment through profile-driven enrollments, or automated device enrollment. All three of these use cases are going to be supported out the gate. Once you have enrolled and managed those devices, we're going to encourage you to push Jump Cloud Protect. In that case, when you push, you'll do a corresponding first-time registration. We'll create a corresponding entry in Protect that correlates to a token. That token will be stored in the secure enclave or the keychain. See a little bit of UI curation there to indicate that you're now able to access those resources. And as you attempt to access them, whether that's Slack, Salesforce, Tableau, whatever applications you may have as your SSO endpoints, you'll have what is called on iOS a single sign-on extension that will be a slide up. It will do a biometric authentication during that time, and pending you successfully authenticate there, you'll be granted access. And we recognize that we're essentially pulling a number of pieces together, right? Conditional access has been around. Device management has been around, Protect has been around. But what we've essentially done is been able to pull all these pieces together, and it's important to make sure that you understand how the configuration goes. So we created what is called a device trust readiness dashboard. It gives you insights into some of the requirements and recommendations of what to configure. So Jump Cloud Go, if you're utilizing iOS, Apple MDM VPP, you get those check marks. Once you have VPP and you've synchronized in Protect, it'll start checking that off. You'll have those hyperlinks that will take you to do the configuration if you haven't yet completed it. Same with Android, all those steps. But we essentially wanted to make sure to guide you through that process to make sure you knew what are all the ingredients needed to make that wonderful apple pie. With all of that said, we also needed to introduce enhancements to our existing conditions as well as net new conditions. So for those of you that may have been utilizing our conditional access policies for just their desktop, you know that we had the device or device management condition as well as disk encryption. However, with this iteration, we needed to do some backend logic modification. So device management now accounts for mobile devices, and disk encryption also accounts for that. We, in that process, decided to add operating system. That way, you have the level of granularity to say, I have desktop conditional access policies, or I may have mobile. I may have general policies for my company, but we wanted to put that level of control or granularity into your hands so that you could maybe phase those policies in for desktop or mobile at your leisure and at your convenience. So let's dive into some technical details. One, really wanted to articulate, you may have seen this pyramid in the past when Tom or Scott presented on Jump Cloud Go when we launched it for desktop. It was a very similar, and the specific call out I would say is this is the area that really establishes that trust. So the trust layer is one, you are either enrolled with Apple MDM or Android EMM. We are making calls during the registration of that token to Play Integrity API for Google or the managed app attestation calls on the Apple side, ensuring that the device is not jailbroken, not an otherwise compromised, not a simulated or virtual device as well. In a potential server farm somewhere. So those are the aspects that we're attesting before we proceed to issue you that corresponding token that will live in a phishing resistant location that you will be able to invoke with your biometrics. And then there is a little bit of a workflow through that process. So as we're looking at it, it might be a little bit of an eye chart, but just to call out on the protect side, when we're utilizing iOS or Android Protect, we'll be storing that corresponding uh, token in the secure enclave or the element. For iOS, we will be invoking the single sign-on extension. That's where the experience will slide up, whether you're in a third-party application, whether you're in Safari or Google on that mobile device, it will slide up and feel like a very native experience. We called out already the corresponding management components as well as the attestation and integrity checks. So we're definitely going to look to encourage customers to, one, draft those enrollments through the user portal. Once enrolled, you'll be able to re-authenticate or register through the user portal as well for the first time, and subsequent authentications will be quite streamlined there. So next steps, let's talk about those. The when, or what are we delivering essentially there? So I wanted to make an announcement. EA for mobile device trust has been open for some time now, and we've had a limited set of customers participating in that. We're allowing for more and more customers to join as we're getting closer and closer to our GA. So if you are interested, email at devicetrust@jumpcloud.com. We'll need your org ID. We'll probably verify, or myself will verify back with you on if you meet the requirements, because there are some extensive requirements associated with that. Pending that you meet those, we can get your organization enabled prior to GA so that you can start testing and experimenting with some of these capabilities. With that being said, I'd love to be able to showcase a demo for you guys and gals. So I'm going to try and maybe narrate it to some degree. So I believe the first one is an unmanaged personal device. That's my personal device. I'll showcase that it's not managed, attempt to access an application that is gated behind a device management condition. It will fail, and then I'll go through the process. I may skip around just from a visibility perspective. So as you can tell, I'm on my iPhone, showcasing that in device management, there's nothing there. So from there, we'll hop over and I will attempt to access Tableau, which we use internally here at JumpCloud, and it's gated behind a device management condition, rightfully so. It has access to some critical company resources. So as you go through the native Tableau experience, we'll detect that we have that particular domain registered. We'll go through, there will be an email followed by a password as well as an MFA prompt. I'll go through those aspects, and then it will do a corresponding check on the conditional access side and determine that I don't have corresponding permissions for that. So as that push, do a light force touch there, and then boom, that typical screen there that you don't meet the requirements. From there, let's skip on a little bit ahead here. We're going to go into the user portal and we're going to get enrolled. So I use this example where if you don't have a secondary device, like let's say a desktop, to where you would be able to hop into the user portal and scan that corresponding QR code, we wanted to showcase that you can also do this on the actual mobile device. Streamlined there. You hit the direct link. Once you're in the user portal, it will trigger a download of the corresponding profile. You will be able to initiate the user enrollment. There's some steps there. Once you've completed that, I believe there's some MFA with or 2FA with a password, or excuse me, the text verification that Apple does, and then it'll proceed and showcase that there are some policies applied, and that's essentially in effect there. Once I am able to log out and log back in, this will actually trigger this corresponding experience. So this is the first time experience that you're seeing. It slides up as a single sign-on extension. It will do a corresponding check into Protect on whether or not there is a valid registration. If not, it will walk me through a first-time user registration. In this case, it goes through the same normal flow of that you may have experienced as a user login, email address, password, MFA if you have that in place, and from there we will direct you into Protect. From in Protect, you will do a finalized registration. It'll showcase that account has been created, and then you're successfully back into the environment or able to access that. All good and dandy, but that's the user portal. Let's hop out and we're going to go to an example for a mobile application. So in this case, our IT team pushes through VPP Salesforce to my device. I grab that and I think I pulled it over just to showcase that this is not fully simulated, but is actually a live application that is in the process of downloading. It'll finish downloading and I will go through then and login process into Salesforce. So I'll launch Salesforce. I'll do the corresponding native application acceptance. In this case, I know the custom domain, so I'll put in JumpCloud in this case, and then it will detect that that is an SSO application registered. I'll say login with JumpCloud. It'll slide up this SSOE, biometric authentication, and voila, I'm in the application. I don't necessarily have to put in my password. I don't have to do subsequent other MFA checks. I'm in. First time registration, email address, password, MFA. If you have that in place, all subsequent authentications are going to use biometrics. But that was just one example. Let's maybe hop over and showcase you another example. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so in this slide, I staged a couple of applications showcasing that JumpCloud Go. We have that corresponding registration. Salesforce you saw already happen, so we're going to skip through that. And then let's maybe take a look at some other applications. There we go, Tableau. So with Tableau, they require a username or an email address. I put that in and biometric authentication, and I'm in, live data. Let's skip on over to the next one. We're going to use Slack as an example. So a couple of things. We have the JumpCloud Lounge, and we have the actual internal JumpCloud Slack aspects. Both of them are detected as available, and I'm able to easily hop into JumpCloud Lounge. However, for the JumpCloud, it requires SAML authentication. When I select SAML, it does biometric authentication with that corresponding check, and boom, you can tell I'm successfully in. I traveled to London for the Android Enterprise event, and I need to confirm my travel. So when I go into Ingencia, I put in my email address, it verifies, does a corresponding SSOE, and I do a biometric auth, and boom, I'm in the application. Very similar flows will be applicable also with Android. It'll detect whether or not you can invoke JumpCloud Go. When you click on it, we have simulated a similar experience. It'll slide up. You will do either fingerprint or facial biometric check. And at that point, it will verify that the token is available and proceed to let you in. So with all that said, that's really the extent of my demo. There's a couple of things I'm happy to showcase live. Here's what in production, what a device trust readiness dashboard would look like. We'd obviously be able to hop you over to the necessary locations as well. Hopefully this doesn't fail for me. There you go. Yep. And then we have already published some of our EA documentation. We'll look to share that maybe after this call or this presentation, but and we've denoted that it is in early access, but getting started, there's a fairly extensive level of documentation. I mean, we're talking levels to try and account for all permutations, plenty of FAQs with the intention to make sure that you're well prepared. So encourage every one of you to go through, review that. It also links to understanding how that dashboard functions, some of the prerequisites, as well as when the end users are doing that configuration, the associated prerequisites on the operating system or biometrics being required, things like that. And we already have videos to how to a guided experience for end users for both iOS personal devices as well as Android or employee-owned Android devices. So really excited to share this with you. Email us at devicetrust@jumpcloud.com if you do want, when you've after reviewing this documentation, you feel like you've meet the requirements and would be willing to participate in that early access and provide feedback for us. So with all that being said, really appreciate that, and I'll hand this back over to you, Becky.
All right. Well, we do have some questions in the chat here. Kelly wants to know, I have clients where we want to block all personal devices unless explicitly allowed. Is there a way to configure that?
So the general notion there is we don't have enrollment blockers. So in theory, the way you would approach it is you would instantiate a conditional access policy that mandates that if it is a iOS or Android device, it has to have the device management condition, and ultimately they would have to enroll through JumpCloud. Once they're enrolled, you obviously can dictate whether they can stay enrolled or not, or if you don't have, for example, the managed Apple ID configured for a particular user, they will not be able to enroll that device. And with the Android side, you get to enable those capabilities on the user portal, or whether they appear in the user portal for them to enroll. So you do have a level of control over that.
Alrighty. And Keith wants to know, can we have device trust on mobile devices, but not Linux?
Yeah, so the way I would phrase that is device trust, or the ability to attest whether a device is managed and trusted, has been available on the desktop for some time. We've historically used the global certificate. So if you don't utilize that and you have no intention to use Mac, Linux, Windows, and you don't want to worry about that, you don't have to enable those capabilities for that. You can go through and set up the necessary requirements for mobile, whether that's iOS, iPadOS, or Android. You do have that level of flexibility, and you can control that and fine tune that based on the conditional access policies.
All right. And Nathan wants to know if they can get users to accept it without the pitchforks and torches.
Yes, so and that's a very fun topic. So Becky can probably attest to it. We're looking to roll out the same functionality here in JumpCloud. So one of the things that we've been doing, myself and Tom have been presenting to JumpCloud employees, showcasing what Apple and Google allow for us to do. Right, the user enrollment and work profile are very much built with end user privacy in mind. They ensure that an admin has very limited insight into their personal, or no insights into the personal space, and very explicit control over the corporate side. So work profile on Android has very good visual context as well, where you have a separation and duplication of applications. Um, Typically what I would say, Nathan, is you'll have to go through an education process. We've started incorporating a number of our documents, links to both Apple and Google specs on what they can or cannot collect. For example, the IMEI serial number on Android and iOS cannot be collected if they're a BYO device, and the controls are also significantly limited. So there will be most likely a campaign that you will have to drive to establish that trust. You'll probably have the 20% that accept you as soon as you say so, the 20% that say absolutely not, and that rest of that bell curve you'll have to do some sort of promoting, articulating. It'll probably be a combination of a carrot and stick approach where you're saying, please enroll, you'll have trusted access and ease of not having to sort of put in your username and password, and the stick would be hey, you may lose access to email or Slack if you don't go through this company mandated requirement.
As a follow on to that, James is asking if there's a way to use the mobile device as an authentication method for accessing other resources, even on the computer. This brings up, so I want you to answer that, but I also want to bridge what Nathan is asking about, because I know when it comes to like protect and stuff like that, sometimes you kind of need that additional device. So if there are some people saying absolutely not because they don't want to use their personal device to authenticate, um, after you answer James's, how do you then deal with that, you know, that extra piece that you need for authentication if someone doesn't want to use their personal device for it?
Yeah, that's a new paradigm there. So I would ask the question maybe in reverse, where I would say, what is your current posture, right? Are you allowing for an unmanaged personal device to have Google Authenticate or Protect or other aspects that actually are configured with a corporate account, has corporate authentication aspects that you're using, but you have very little to no control? What we're essentially saying is, when you have that paradigm, it's been around for quite some time, right? I've been in the MDM space for about a decade now. Um, Having personally enrolling or registering or lightweight managed devices has become a norm. Customers often or end users may not be aware of that, but if you do a lightweight, let's say Google or Microsoft registration, there do at times put some level of controls. We're saying to streamline that experience, if you're going to allow for a mobile device to serve as a authentication method, you probably want to have a little bit more control over where and how that gets utilized. So we're saying there will be some level of education, lightweight management, the experience and the control that the end user has, especially, for example, to pitch work profile. If you put that in work profile, you get to containerize that. You will have your personal side. You can technically use Protect on your personal side. And in the work container, you will have a Jump Cloud Protect application. It will contain all the resources that you're configuring for work related. When you go on vacation or when you're going on, just the weekend, you can toggle off that container, meaning you get no distractions. That's one of those benefits that we have to often educate the end users about. There's a benefit of a separation between personal and work. And when the company asks you to enroll, it's not necessarily for them to spy on you. It's actually to enhance your productivity as well as to protect the company as well.
Mhm. So to go back to James' question, James, yes, there are ways to use your mobile device as an authentication method for resources on the computer. Serge, do you want to say a little bit more about that to go into more detail? Because we use it all the time. Do you want to explain what that means for James in case he doesn't know exactly what we're talking about?
Gotcha. So, James, the way we utilize it is uh, when you enroll a desktop device and you go in and essentially you'll have a managed desktop or laptop and you get an access in the user portal, we'll prompt you to configure uh, MFA. So typically we give you an option between a third party and our preferred method would be GemCloud Protect. That device configuration uh, happens typically on iOS or Android device. You install that application, do that mobile push and or a TOTP registration. So moving forward, when you're attempting to access a SSO endpoint, the user portal, or log into your laptop, desktop, you will be able to have an MFA prompt that is sent to that primary mobile device as either a mobile push or a TOTP record that you can utilize there. We don't use texting as a or SMS as a MFA. We have push and TOTP in this case.
Great. But we do recommend Cloud Go because it's even better than using a mobile push. Anyway, Kelly wants to know if the device is signed onto a personal Apple ID. Can someone sign in and enroll using a different managed Apple ID?
Yeah, so that's the separation of user enrollment. So with user enrollment, you will have to utilize your managed Apple ID, or Apple has, I think this year, chosen to rebrand it a managed Apple account. But with that being said, you will actually, when you go into the settings application, you'll see your personal, and below that, you will see your manager, your corporate Apple IDs, and they will have separation in the corresponding iCloud storage as well. So, yes, you can definitely do that. I think the one thing that I would double click on when it comes to what quantifies a personal versus a managed, if someone happens to use the corporate domain, let's say I have sergey.belous at jumpcloud.com. If I happen to use that when I created a personal Apple ID, the owners of that corresponding domain, our JumpCloud IT, is going to be able to sort of sort of reallocate that account be for enterprise use cases or managed use cases only. So make sure you're not encouraging or more specifically discourage your end users from signing up for personal Apple IDs using the company email address.
Yeah, that can be tricky, especially if you've downloaded a bunch of music and things on those, because when they take it over, you're going to lose all that. So kindly discourage them. And Pavan has a question about how do we block Apple ID configuration in a user's laptop? That follows up with what we were just talking
So
about. I'm not
I'm not.
sure if you. Yeah.
I don't know that you can prevent the sort of the signing in with an Apple ID on a Mac. I'm not aware of an aspect there. I believe there may be some controls for. Uh, I'll have to follow up on that one actually. I don't have context. I believe there is always the ability to configure an Apple ID on your Mac device.
Yeah, maybe, Yvonne, if you can go into a little more detail about whether you're talking about them doing like what we were talking about signing up on their own versus having a managed one, or them creating their own, or if you're talking about something beyond that where they're signing in and configuring something else. Maybe if you'll add a little more context in the chat, we can go into a little more detail. Mark wants to know if there's a way to migrate Jump Cloud Protect from personal to a container. I think it depends on which device you're talking about, Mark.
Yeah, I would say that from a general perspective, there isn't a way to just magically migrate over. I think that's depending on the enrollment type specifically. And I think we did account for this use case or think through this use case there on a fully managed Android device, you'll have to factory reset the device either way. So if that's been your primary user, I'm not quite sure of that use case there, right? In the sense that you would have had Jump Cloud Protect configured on a company-owned device that you're now having to factory reset. So after factory reset, you'll have Protect pushed and you'll configure that anew. On a work profile enrollment, you will still be able to maintain your on the personal side a instance of Jump Cloud Protect. You would have to encourage your end users if they're using that for any corporate use cases to shift over to using the one in the work profile, but there's not a necessarily a migration between the profiles. There's a very sharp, distinct separation between the personal data versus the work data. So there's not a lot of travel in between that sort of firewall there. Or with built into the firmware layer. And with iOS, the notion is if it's on an ABM or AD enrolled or a profile-driven device enrollment, you can actually prompt the end user to take over permissions and shift it from it's a flag basically is application managed. So when you push that application, it will prompt the end user saying Jump Cloud or is attempting to take over management, please approve, and they'll be able to do that. With user enrollment, it's slightly more nuanced. You'll be able to use the personal side. We generally don't recommend that because the SSOE applies across the board for that, but we generally would say unenroll, or excuse me, delete those configurations, and you'll have to reinstall Protect via the MDM configuration there.
And another question here. Is there any way to get alerts while when users install any apps in Jump Cloud configured laptops? So let's see, when they install an app on a Jump Cloud controlled laptop, do you get an alert when you install something?
So I guess the question would be where you're looking to get the alert, but in general, the notion there is when an end user installs a piece of software, I believe some of that may be eventually collected via the Jump Cloud agent, but we wouldn't necessarily alert it at the time of installation or the download. So that's more of a little bit further into the device health and the application lists that we're sort of exploring, but I wouldn't say that we have corresponding alerts for that.
Yeah, I think you would want to look through directory insights or something like that, but it wouldn't be a proactive alert. I think you would just have to I think we would just have to run a report for that. And it would have to be, assuming it checks in and everything. Um, are we planning anything on any of the dashboards to have like a running, you know, easy way to show any of that?
So I think we're always looking to enhance capabilities of our overarching application management posture, right? With the catalog and some of the aspects of users requesting access to certain SSO applications and following that on. But I wouldn't say that we have an immediate dashboard or something that would showcase any and every end user installed piece of software.
Yeah. But I will throw this up on stage, feature request. We always put this up at some point during the show anyway. So anything like that that you don't see that you would like to suggest as a feature, please go ahead and submit your request. Um, in case anyone is new to the show and hasn't seen that before, I know many of you who are regulars already know this and hear us bang that drum every week. But there you go. There's our regular plug for putting that in.
Yeah,
And
and for the feature request, one of the things I would say is when you do submit that feature request, please be as detailed as you can, right? When we receive that request, we do look to triage them. Our product managers review them. Uh, Frequently, we look to build out our roadmap. So if you have particular questions of what platform, because now that we support 5+ platforms, specify which, if any, or a combination of those platforms you're looking to have. What is the use case, not just the ask, but the overarching use case of what you're trying to see? And maybe if you're comfortable or if you have an idea, suggest how you would like for it to behave, right? That way we understand what your intentions are from that request and we're able to address that.
yeah, absolutely. Kelly still hears the feature request reminder in Urvishi's voice. Yes, feature request. She always did it very sing-songy, which was a nice little addition there. I can't do it as well. So, or we could do it in Urvishi's dad's voice, which would require people to go do that. I'll have to get a recording of it and then just play it. I'll have to ask her to record it. Uh, I think we've gone through all the questions, but if you think of something else, please go ahead and put it in the chat. I will move over to the news. We've only got like 3 or 4 anyway today, so nothing huge. We'll jump over to that, and if you think of something, drop it in, and we'll circle back to it really quickly. All right. Actually, I think this is really a good piece of news coming out from, I saw it in Computer World and pulled it over. Google is rolling out a cloud-based enterprise browser management tool. Chrome Enterprise Core will add new management capabilities for Chrome across platforms and for multiple roles. So they're releasing a tool designed to allow um, enterprise then manage enterprise to be able to manage the security of workers' browser setups. It's called Chrome Enterprise Core. It was released on Wednesday, and it allows you the ability to configure and manage browsers across the whole org. It's free of charge, and it also offers you the ability to gain better visibility into Chrome browser deployments. It enables teams to manage browser policies, settings, apps, and extensions from a single console. Works across mobile and desktop devices, allowing management of Chrome browsers on various devices and platforms. Wow, sorry, this article is kind of repetitive. I did not edit it. Policy configuration will allow administrators to set and enforce policies such as blocking potentially problematic browser extensions. Sergey, I haven't discussed this really with our PMs yet, but I'm sure we're probably already working on how we can incorporate that into our management and things like that. At least I hope we are.
Yeah, I think as soon as they made that I think they made that announcement. Well, I don't know if it was at Google Next or Google I/O. We had some folks already there in person. So I think our Cloud Labs teams, as well as some of our product managers, are already looking at that. So uh, be on the lookout for more information as we sort of dig in under the covers there.
Yeah. Oh, James is saying he thinks he was trying to block access to Google infrastructure for mobile devices using conditional access, but had no way to do so because there wasn't a way to check for device OS. So I have a follow-up question. If users already have access to their own personal Google accounts, does this allow us to add users' work Google workspace accounts? I think that comes from earlier about the using devices to
Yeah.
manage access to.
Yeah, the way I would describe that is I would assume that you have Google Workspace as an SSO application and you're defining in the conditional access policies for that's either a set of SSO applications or for Google Workspace explicitly, and then you're selecting the corresponding conditions. In this case, you'll be selecting device management, and if because we didn't have the operating system condition, it would target all devices. So maybe your desktops work because they have the trust certificate would be able to access it, but your mobile device would be explicitly blocked. This capability allows you to, one, be able to target either desktop or mobile, along with being able to ensure that your mobile devices, when they enroll, when they have protected and have done the registration, they will be able to attest and pass that device management condition. If they have their personal Google accounts, I think that's the conversation would be when they enroll and are essentially trusted devices, they'll be able to configure their Google Workspace accounts and be able to get past the conditional access policy that would have otherwise possibly previously blocked them.
All right. Well, thanks for that follow-up, James. Helps you out there. All right. Secondly, Microsoft's bundling of Teams may have violated EU antitrust rules. This is also from the computer world. Microsoft could face a fine of up to 10% of its annual worldwide turnover if it fails to defend itself against the European Commission's preliminary findings. Microsoft broke the EU competition law by bundling Teams with other O365 applications. This is what the EU Commission said in a preliminary finding published Tuesday. If they fail to defend themselves, the company would face billions of dollars in fines and other penalties. The EU's antitrust regulator said it had sent Microsoft a statement of objections outlining its finding that the company had given Teams an unfair advantage by bundling it with subscriptions to Office 365 and Microsoft 365. And let's see, the Commission preliminary finds that Microsoft is dominant worldwide in the market for SaaS productivity applications for professional use, it said in a news release posted Tuesday. So I think we've heard that many times, and of course, the EU is doing lots of stuff. In fact, that leads into the next news, which is where now they are taking a similar tactic over Apple, delaying their AI releases in the EU. So Apple Intelligence won't arrive in Europe when iOS 18 and macOS Sequoia debut. And Apple said that it would delay rollout of certain features in the EU, including the Apple Intelligence AI tools, over concerns that the interoperability requirements of the DMA could force us to compromise the integrity of our products in ways that risk user privacy and data security. That's what Apple says. The EU says that it's a stunning open declaration that they know 100% that this is another way of disabling competition where they have a stronghold already. So there's going to be a little bit of back and forth about that, where Apple says it's something to do with privacy, and the EU says, yeah, no, you just don't want to stick to our rules. So I'm sure there's going to be more to come with that. Have you been following any of this, Sergey, at all since WWDC?
Yes, not all of those, but I am not surprised with the EU stepping in there. I think I watched the Apple presentation when they introduced Apple Intelligence. It was their interesting take on that. It is a very fine line to walk of saying we want to give you these capabilities, or even saying we want to give you choices on which AIs you use. But then you're sort of are saying we're going to have a tunnel between the device and whatever AI infrastructure, and then you're going to have to we're not we're taking no liability on how that data gets handled. So it almost falls. I think you could easily get into a situation where the end user is unaware of which um, is configured and what the policies are and where that data is transmitted to. So I think there's going to be some nuances that we're going to have to, we as in collectively, the world will have to work through, with Apple sort of leading the pack with the amount of devices we all hold from them.
Yeah, I mean, even just the way they were representing it at first, like there's going to be some that's on device as much as possible, but then when it's too big, it's going to have to go to the cloud, but it's still private cloud. And then, oh, but if we really want to, if you want to send it to Chat GPT or OpenAI, you can, but we'll ask you first. And I think that that's going to be confusing for um, a lot of just regular users who haven't been talking about AI a lot and haven't really been digging into it like a lot of IT folks have, especially like this group here who, are looking at it from the perspective of their companies and data privacy. Anyway, you get a regular user who doesn't pay any attention to that at all and maybe doesn't read a EULA all the way through when they're signing up for something, then it's going to get really complicated. And then you just have people who are really concerned about privacy and maybe they don't understand all of this, but they know I don't want people owning any of my data whatsoever. Then you've got that kind of in between state where they're just not even going to be sure what to do anyway. So it's going to be a really interesting fight. And are they going to just follow the DMA everywhere, or are they going to make it different for Europe and the US? Or are they just going to, hey, let's just do this everywhere because it's just easier? I mean, like car manufacturers make emissions in the US to California standards and then they just ship them everywhere because it's just easier, right? But for whatever reason, companies don't do that with the European rules, just make everything to fit that and then ship it everywhere. That would be the easiest thing, but they don't do that yet. Oh, hey, Nathan, have a good weekend. We are almost done. I've got one more. This one struck me as really fascinating, and I'm not sure what to think of it. So, Gizmodo had a headline that caught my eye that said the feds have another way to spy on your email. And I know some of these are grabby headlines, but there's a program inside the U.S. Postal Service that allows law enforcement agencies to request data about specific Americans' mail. It's a little known Postal Service program dubbed the Mail Covers Program, and it has been around for a while, providing information about certain Americans' mail to federal law enforcement agencies. And this is what the Washington Post reported on Monday. So while officials maintain that the program is only ever used to investigate criminal activity, it appears to get quite a lot of use, with some Americans claiming they were targeted by the program despite never having done anything illegal. The mail covers program does not allow outside agencies to open a person's mail, but it does allow them to see the information that's printed on the outside of letters and packages. A previously published document on the program describes a mail cover as an investigative tool used to record data appearing on the outside of a mail piece. For obvious reasons, this could still provide a lot of information about a person under surveillance. Now, some of the agencies have been like the FBI, IRS, Department of Homeland Security, and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. But the Post reported that state and local police forces have also been known to use the program, and there's no requirement for a court order or sign off from a judge to take a look at what is on the person's label. And this program has been used more than 158,000 times during one 4-year period. Uh, and police agencies made an average of about 6,700 requests a year. So that just kind of blew my mind right there. That I mean, I know that the post office like scans mail so that if you want to get your delivery notifications, you can see what's coming and everything. But I had no idea that agencies could request that information to see what type of mail you're getting. I should have known that that was something they would and could be doing, but wow. So some
Yeah,
senators are calling for a little more oversight on that, and yes, they should be.
yeah. USPS, what is it called? USPS informed delivery. I've had it for
Mm-hmm.
years, right? And once scanned and on a government server to be able to get me that email, I am not surprised that they say, "Hey, we retain this information because we scanned it, and should there be a use, we reserve the right to at some point look through your scanning." I mean, that's not shocking at this point.
Oh, but guess what? Even if you don't subscribe to that program, they scan your mail anyway. They scan everybody's mail. Just they just scan all of it through there. It's supposed to be for, like tracking and efficient delivery, but like it doesn't matter if you actually use that service or not. They're still scanning it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes because a couple of legislators are asking for further transparency and better controls. So maybe we can write in and support it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now that you mention it, it's curious because USPS does it. I'm curious if other shipping vendors, UPS, FedEx, whatnot, if they scan it and if in their EULA they have any context of how that data can be sold, right? If I'm getting, I don't know, subscription deliveries or prescription, let's say deliveries via a particular one, if a pharmaceutical company can acquire that data from FedEx or UPS and say, I'm going to target this one via marketing. That would be an interesting thought process that comes to my mind of if
Mm-hmm.
the government has it for law enforcement purposes, others will probably want it for better marketing or targeted, selling purposes.
Well, think about it. Sometimes UPS will do SurePost and it sends through the post office. And like if it's the ground deliveries, and I get emails. Like if you sign up for an account, like just a free account from UPS and FedEx, you can get emails that tell you when your packages are going to arrive. But I'd have to go back and look because it's been so long since I signed up for it. It could have changed since then about what happens with that information. So yeah, that's a good point. And Kelly says informed delivery isn't just about informing you about your mail. So yeah, Pikachu shocked face there. All right. Well, that was the last piece of news, and we are officially at time. So, as a reminder, next week is the holiday, and we will not be here. But also, the week after that is Penn State Mac Admins Conference at Penn State University, and I will be there for the Mac Admins Foundation. So, I will be on the road on Friday, unable to do the show. So, apologies in advance. So that will be 2 weeks in a row that we won't be able to be here. But I promise that the week after that, July 19th, we will have Chase on for our SME IT Trends survey. We're going to give you a preview of that before the full on webinar where we go over the full results. So you will get information here before you get it anywhere else. So, hey, it's going to be great. And with that, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy any time off you get. If you're in Europe and you don't get that, but hey, in Europe they practically take all of July and August off at some point anyway, so you get longer vacation than we do. So uh, I'm not envious at all. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your time off. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye all.
Take care, folks.